And joining me now on the show is the one and only James Roguski. James, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
James, I'm so glad that we're able to speak today. This is a big deal because what we've been told all along about the Pandemic Treaty was it was a runaway train, but somehow something's changed, and we have 11 nations that have come up and broken the silence. Can you fill us in on the details, please?
Absolutely. I've been talking about the fact that there are four tracks, four different things that people need to pay attention to. And, the railroad train going down those first track got derailed on Wednesday, September 20th. This is unbelievably confusing. And so I'm going to do my best to try to simplify it. The United Nations was attempting to make a public declaration or a political declaration without actually having it voted on by the official General Assembly. It was a meeting, and they were attempting to do this little bit of theater and adopt a document. And the 11 nations that sent a letter on Sunday literally used the word pretend. They said, "We do not agree. We will not allow you to pretend to use the United Nations authority, whatever they may have, um, to make it look like this is, an official agreement." And so the method by which they did this on Wednesday was they opened the first session, and the president of the General Assembly said, "Well, we sent you this document a couple of weeks ago. You've all had a chance to look at it, and it's in dealing with this. And I trust that everybody's happy with me and this document. And so, okay, boom, slam the gavel." And that is how they pretended to adopt it. And
Goodness
then
me.
they spent the whole day just speaking propaganda. And so
Mm.
it's an 8-hour lesson in propaganda. If anybody showed up late to the party, you missed the means by which this was adopted. Okay. Well,
Mm.
that was theater. Maybe they will bring this to the full General Assembly, but this is the game that they're playing. And quite frankly, there's a lot of, backroom discussions going on about how they absolutely failed miserably. I mentioned, a quote from Francis Boyle, who's in the United
Mm.
States. He's a constitutional professor and lawyer. Um, this was an enormous defeat for them because they felt they were going to be able to just put out some wonderful propaganda and everybody would just drink the Kool-Aid. Well, if you look at the news, if you read anything about this, you'll probably come away with a belief that is different than the reality of what actually happened. And so all they were trying to do was get the power of the UN's declaration, which is just a bunch of hot air,
Mm.
but have this uniform view to support the negotiations that arguably are starting to unravel and may fall apart if we keep pulling at the strings. And so in Australia, if people go to Australia exits the who.com, take action as soon as you can, and use the systems that they have to reach out to your members of parliament and the Senate. um, the deadline, I believe, is the 24th. My understanding, I could be wrong, but the deadline had been the 17th, but they extended to the 24th. Their view is that your silence is the same as your consent. So
Mm.
please speak up, whether it's on video or audio or written or whatever it may be. Express your opinion about whatever it is you believe about these negotiations that are being done in secret.
James, I guess the biggest question for anyone listening, anyone paying attention, is these broken silence nations, the 11 nations, is that enough to slow it down? So even if there's just one holdout, maybe it's Russia, who's one of the 11 nations, does that mean that the pandemic treaty can't go ahead? Is it like a snag, or is it going to go ahead without some of these nations?
No, it's much more complicated than that. We need far more effort, than that. Ultimately, the goal is for more and more people to pay attention, um, shine a light on what they're trying to do in secret. Anybody who looks at what they're doing, I have put together a page, the People's Declaration. So if anybody goes to thepeoplesdeclaration.com, what they're ultimately doing is trying to spend tens of billions of dollars to build out a laboratory network around the world to seek out and identify and share pathogens with pandemic potential. Well, my goodness, that's not going to solve the problem. That's likely to make it worse.
Yes.
But there's a lot of potential money to be made by scaring people with new pathogens and telling them that they have to take drugs or jabs because there's the potential for a pandemic. Once anybody sees clearly, even though they're hiding it, when you understand that they're trying to get people to sign on to, or nations to sign on to something that's not a treaty, it's a framework convention. And the best analogy would be if you had a contract and you're ready to sign it, and somebody slipped in a whole bunch of blank sheets of paper and said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll pick some people that you don't know off in the future to fill in those blank pages. Just sign here." That is what they're trying to get the nations that are members of the WHO to sign on to. And that is insane, but it's not unprecedented. In 1992, the 193 nations of the UN signed on to the Framework Convention for Climate Change. And so if you wonder why things are so crazy in regards to energy and fossil fuels and renewable energy and carbon credits and all that craziness, it's because back then they agreed to a framework convention and then the details get worked out later. But you've already signed the contract. You've already agreed to allow somebody else to work out the details. That is as nefarious as it could possibly be. And the only answer to that is no, stop these negotiations. If you were going to be negotiating anything, how about a treaty to end gain of function research? And even better than that, Australia exits the WHO.com, exit the WHO.org for everywhere else in the world. We need to leave an organization that is trying to put tens of billions of dollars into, doing an order of magnitude increase in the things that they did to us over the last 4 years. They haven't learned a lesson other than, well, they seem to have gotten away with it so far. They're more than doubling down, trying to do it all over again.
James, it's a great recommendation for anyone hearing this that the next time you're in front of your laptop, simply type in Australia exits the who.com and you've got until September 24th. So there's no time like the present to get in and get involved. James Roguski, thanks for your time today on World Series News.
Thank you.